Finding Mrs. Claus is definitely a different film. It's certainly very creative. I didn't think it was too bad. This was released in 2012. It's directed by Mark Jean and it's written by Andrea Seybold, Kate Wharton and Andrea Stevens. And we have a cast including Mira Sorvino as Jessica Claus. And we also have Laura Vandervoort and Andrew W. Walker. And Mrs. Claus actually receives a letter from a little girl who wants to help her mother fall in love again so she'll be happy, which is really, really sweet. And Mrs. Claus decides that she's going to go and see this little girl and help her with her Christmas wish. And to do so, she has to go to Vegas. And she takes off. And obviously everybody in the North Pole, Santa Claus, is wondering where she is. And there's a whole panic there, of course. Meanwhile, Mrs. Claus is trying to help this little girl. And I don't want to say too much more than that. I had a lot of questions about how the narrative would work, how the characters would act. I will say she's not my version of Mrs. Claus. When I think of Mrs. Claus, this is not what I see. But in general, I don't mind that too much. It doesn't bother me at all. I can still see her as Mrs. Claus. She's just, I guess she's not a typical representation of Mrs. Claus. And also just seeing her in Vegas is a very interesting concept. And honestly, I didn't know what to expect from it, but I thought the narrative was actually really well handled and generally enjoyable. It's creative, it's a little bit different. I rather liked it. The characters are all well written, the acting is very good, even though it's not my version of a Mrs. Claus. As I said, I still enjoyed the character and the performance, and it's quite fascinating. It definitely gets points for being creative and different. The narrative is well handled, the pacing is good, it's unpredictable. I had a lot of questions about where it was going and how it would end up, and I was happy to enjoy that journey and watch things unfold. So if you're looking for a Christmas film with a bit of a twist, something a little bit different, a little bit creative, with some great performances, and we have some beautiful Christmas decorations and things, then I'd say Finding Mrs. Claus is one to go with. Definitely a fascinating concept, and in general, I'd say I rather enjoyed it.